Welcome to Principles of Ecology. Today, we are going to explore the fascinating world of species interactions. Just like human beings, no animal or plant lives in total isolation. They all share a neighborhood, and how they treat each other determines who survives, who thrives, and who fades away. Let us dive in and discover how these relationships shape the natural world. To understand how species interact, imagine you are living in a very crowded apartment building. Some neighbors are your best friends, sharing groceries and making life better. Others might be incredibly noisy, making it hard for you to sleep. Or they might even steal your morning newspaper. In nature, plants, animals, and microbes live in similar neighborhoods called ecosystems. They constantly interact in these exact same ways, forming invisible threads that hold the entire natural world together. Now that we understand the neighborhood concept, let us look at how ecologists measure these relationships. In ecological terms, interactions affect a species' survival and reproduction, which we collectively call fitness. We categorize these effects using simple math symbols. A positive effect, or a plus sign, means the interaction increases a species' fitness. A negative effect, or a minus sign, means it harms the species. And a neutral effect, denoted by a 0, means the species is completely unaffected by its neighbor. Understanding these basic categories is the foundation of all ecological modeling. By combining these positive, negative, and neutral signs, we can classify all major species interactions. Mutualism is positive for both species involved. Competition is negative for both, as they fight for the same resources. Predation and parasitism benefit one species while harming the other. Commensalism benefits one and leaves the other completely unaffected. Finally, amensalism harms one species while leaving the other unaffected. These combinations describe every possible relationship in nature. Every organism on Earth participates in at least one of these fundamental interactions. Before we move on to the mathematics, we must understand why these interactions are absolutely crucial. No species exists in isolation. If we want to save an endangered plant, we must also protect its mutualistic pollinators and manage its predators. In agriculture, farmers use these interactions to introduce natural predators of pests, reducing the need for harmful chemicals. Without these relationships, food webs would collapse, nutrient cycles would halt, and biodiversity would simply cease to exist. Mastering these concepts allows us to protect and sustain the delicate balance of our planet. To truly predict how species affect one another, ecologists use mathematical models. We start with the basic logistic growth equation and add an interaction term. In this formula, dn1 over dt is the population growth rate of species 1. R1 is the intrinsic growth rate, and K1 is the carrying capacity. The crucial new piece is alpha 1, 2, the interaction coefficient. It represents exactly how much species 2 helps or harms species 1. N2 is the population of species 2. If the interaction coefficient increases, the impact of the second species becomes much stronger. This generalized formula leads us to our first specific scenario: competition. Notice the minus sign before the alpha term. We use a negative sign because competition is harmful. Species 2 is taking away valuable resources. As the population of species 2 increases, that subtracted term gets larger, which shrinks the available carrying capacity. Physically, this means the overall growth rate of species 1 will drop significantly because they're fighting for the same limited space and food. This mathematical representation perfectly captures the struggle for survival in a crowded ecosystem. Let us see this with a concrete example. Imagine a grassy field where sheep, our species 1, compete with goats, our species 2. We are given the sheep's growth rate, population, and carrying capacity. The goats are aggressive eaters, so one goat equals 1.5 sheep, making our alpha 1.5. We plug these values into our competition equation. The term 1.5 times 20 becomes 30, meaning the goats are eating the food of 30 sheep. Solving this, we find the sheep population grows by just 1 sheep per year. Now that we have calculated the growth rate, let us prove mathematically why this matters. What if the goats were not there at all? If we remove the interaction term, the sheep would grow at a base rate of 2.5 sheep per year. But with the goats present, the rate falls to just 1 sheep per year. This mathematical comparison proves how the negative interaction of competition directly suppresses population growth. It perfectly demonstrates the real-world impact of sharing limited resources in a crowded ecosystem. Having proven how competition harms growth, let us look at a positive interaction: mutualism. Notice the plus sign before the alpha term in this version of the equation. This mathematical shift changes the entire dynamic from harmful to helpful. Because species 2 provides extra resources or benefits, we model this as an addition to the available carrying capacity. Physically, as the mutualist population increases, it effectively creates more opportunity and space, causing the growth rate of species 1 to rise. This shows how cooperation can literally expand the boundaries of what an environment can support. Let us apply this mutualism formula to a species of flowering plant and a species of bee. The bees pollinate the plants, increasing their effective carrying capacity. We are given the plant's base stats, 50 bees, and a mutualism coefficient of 0.4. We plug these into our equation with the plus sign. The term 0.4 times 50 gives us 20, representing the bonus reproductive capacity provided by the bees. Simplifying the math, we find a final growth rate of 6.4 plants per year. Just as we did with competition, let us prove the impact of this mutualistic relationship. If the bees were completely absent, we would drop the interaction term. The plants would only grow at a rate of 4.8 plants per year. But thanks to the bees, they grow at 6.4 plants per year. This beautifully illustrates how mutualistic interactions enhance survival and reproduction. It proves mathematically that populations can thrive beyond their normal isolated limits, showing exactly why protecting pollinators is so vital. To bring all of this together, let us look at the species interaction matrix. This diagram maps out every possible relationship between species A and species B. On the axes, we have positive, negative, and neutral effects. Where two positives intersect, we see mutualism in the top left. Where two negatives meet, we find competition in the center. You can also clearly see asymmetrical relationships, like predation, where one benefits and the other is harmed. This matrix is the ultimate cheat sheet for ecological relationships. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us review our key takeaways. First, species interactions are the fundamental relationships that dictate how organisms live together. Second, by categorizing these as positive, negative, or neutral, we map the complex web of nature. Third, we learned how to use mathematical models and interaction coefficients to precisely calculate these effects, proving that competition suppresses growth while mutualism enhances it. Mastering these concepts is your first step to understanding the delicate balance of life on Earth.